And before we move any further, in order to our newest member will be sworn in.
We do. No. Do we pledge allegiance or no? Not for tonight.
Yeah. Do we, we must have missed that
On the work session?
maybe we don't. Mostly do.
Do solemnly swear that I will support.
solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America,
Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania,
the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania,
and ordinances and regulations of the Borough of Indiana.
and the ordinances and regulations of the Borough of Indiana.
And I will discharge the duties
That I will discharge the duties
as a member of the Council of the Borough of Indiana
as a member of the Council of the Borough of Indiana
with honor and fidelity to the best of my ability. So help me God.
with honor and fidelity to the best of my abilities, to help me God.
Congratulations.
you.
It's warm now.
We had to go.
Oh, we did? Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
I couldn't stop laughing.
And
That's okay. I'll get your signature at the end and then sign it and I'll make a copy. And then please, okay. Here.
Wilder, Ward, here, Harry, Prescott,
Present.
Lancaster,
Here.
Noel, Smith, Steelman,
here,
Taylor. 9 present, 3 absent. Yes, I did. That's okay. That's okay.
Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? We will be moving the executive session to the end, but we will be having an executive session for
Personnel and legal.
personnel and legal matters at the end. And now this is the time for public comment. Is there anyone who came wishes to address us? Please step forward, state your name and say your address, and you have 3 minutes.
Don't start.
As soon as you ask, I'm sorry. Rich? Carolina, and I live on. I just want to come here tonight and just say, I love how Indiana spends one day of the year to celebrate people with disabilities. And then the rest of the year, you guys kick us disability people to the curb and you give no crap about us. That includes not only people in the community, but businesses on. It's not your job except for that one day during this, what is it, the first Friday of May, they celebrate one day of disability. You guys gotta do the 365 every day for 24 hours, 7 days a week, every day of the year, instead of just one God blessed day during the summer. You guys gotta get businesses and everything following the ADA of 1990. Or this town is gonna go to crap more than it already is. My time is spent.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address the council? In that case, we're gonna move to committee reports if we have any. Administrative committee. Do we have anything? I don't think we have any. We haven't met since the last meeting. Community development.
We have met since the last meeting.
I know you have.
We did talk about a lot of things, one of which was the comprehensive plan progress. We noted that it is still in progress. But the big change is that we are going to plan some sort of public engagement event to bring more awareness to the community about our comprehensive plan. We also welcome Trajan Jones as our new planning and zoning official for the borough. Anybody who hasn't met him, I'm sure you'll get the chance. We're excited to have him on board. We discussed the amusement device ordinance. For anybody not at that meeting last night, there was some, I don't know about concern, but we were wondering where the new poker machines and games of skill fit into the amusement ordinance that we currently have. Pat was asked to take a look at the ordinance, and he got back to Nicole and said that the ordinance it does fall under that ordinance as an amusement device. So we were going to send out the letters saying that they are required to be registered, and there's a fee as well with that each year, an annual fee. And then as we went on, we discussed the possibility of having Pat take another look at the ordinance and seeing if there's any way we could separate out those particular machines that were games of skill or poker machines or whatever they're called these days. If there's a way to separate them out to make it a separate fee in registration, due to the fact that some of us were concerned that they really shouldn't be on the same list as a pinball machine and possibly should have a different fee schedule. So you don't have to answer now. I'm just saying that's what we discussed, and we were going to come to you and discuss it. So Nicole will get up with you.
If you're not looking to change the fee, it makes no sense to change the ordinance, but.
We are looking to, I think we're looking to change the fee.
schedule,
Yeah,
then Certainly.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so we'll look at that. I think the current ordinance does not allow for any limit to those. So that might be something that gets brought up, and, we're going to be discussing that probably at our next meeting again, briefly. We won't finish it, but we'll discuss it again. Other than that, we also discussed the Complete Streets program, and we will be completing that document and having something for everybody to look at before our next meeting, and possibly get the process of forming a committee to finalize that Complete Streets plan, so that can be incorporated into our comprehensive plan, because we're trying to get all of this stuff wrapped up before we rewrite the whole ordinance, the zoning ordinance rewrite, which is coming down the pipe soon enough, and we'll be hiring consultants to do all that. So there's a lot of work ahead of us, and we're doing it. That's about it.
Any questions for community development? Public safety?
We did meet, but nothing really outstanding to discuss. Cover everything in the next meeting.
Is there anyone who has something in public works? In the absence of the chair?
I do have a question. If we're looking to change the fees, does the state already have set?
That when Pat looks at it, he's gonna have to answer all those questions. Yeah, I'm imagining it's a legal matter. It's not something we can just come up with. So, yeah.
We will have, as a council, we'll have to be voting on the fees that we charge for everything fairly soon. That usually goes through administration. Community development is taking that one set of fees last night. Anything from Shade Tree?
No, we haven't met yet this month.
Wow, this is going nice, very nicely. Nicole.
Just
A reminder that Public Works and Admin will be combining their meetings this month do you remember that, Peter? To the 27th, because they'll be at 6:30 for the committee members, a tour of the building, and then when the meeting starts, there'll be a presentation on the borough upgrades from the project manager. So that will be held on Monday. 6:30 is the tour. We'll send out the agenda with a reminder.
Starting where?
Here, yeah. The commissioners has asked that I serve on the public participation panel for Indiana County, and I accepted that. So they'll get with me next month. And I think Peter was asked to serve on it too. So we'll find out what that is all about.
Not enough to do.
We met last month with Kay Smith. I met with Kay Smith in a small group, Bob Chrisan, Barb Haig, and our Parks Department supervisor. And we just kind of went down 7th Street and was going over the trees and the sidewalks and IRMC and Vinegar Hill. So we started the process, and we're going to try to reach out to some business owners in that area and try to get together and start a plan for that area. I know it's been on community development's part of a project for that area to kind of clean up that area. The Get Solar deadline is at the end of the week. Kyle and Leo and I went on to the radio. They did a great job getting the word out. I know a lot of people attended the webinar that was held. Thanks to the council members for getting the word out. So hopefully we'll have lots of applications. I know the borough submitted an application for the wastewater treatment plant, or in the borough in general, to look into some savings there for us. So, and that's it.
Mr. President, thank you. I'd like to begin my remarks by extending condolences to the family of Temple University police officer Christopher Fitzgerald. Media reports indicate that on Saturday, he was killed attempting to intervene in a robbery attempt here at the University of Temple in the city of Borough. He was killed by 18 year-old. Succinctly, our public safety missions are a true challenge, and every man and woman in a police uniform accepts that our success is only achieved on the backdrop of danger. With that being said, we thank Officer Fitzgerald for his ultimate sacrifice. Continuing, Police Department employee Hunter Scherf has submitted his resignation, and it has been accepted. We thank him for his service to our community. Finally, March is anticipated to be an active month for the police department and for the community at large. We understand that the IUP men's basketball team may have an opportunity to host a regional tournament, which would bring a number of teams to our Indiana community in early March. We also understand that the KCAC is hosting a Keystone State Wrestling Tournament that's set to bring thousands upon thousands of visitors to the community. And we also know that St. Patrick's Day and sometimes associated celebratory activities occur during the month of March. So just an update to council that, as always, we're preparing with our partners. I will have more reports the closer we get to some of these events. And that is all.
Are there questions for the chief? Look at this go.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did want to give the council an update. The court did finally approve that we are able to advertise, since we've not been able to get Patricia Bell served with the lawsuit involving her rundown properties. The court signed an order and for us to be able to advertise in both the legal journal and the newspaper. They have, I know it was in the most recent legal journal. I saw it when I checked it this morning, and the Gazette has told me that they've started to run it as well. It'll be run once a week for 3 consecutive weeks. Then once that happens, if we don't have any response in 30 days, then I'll file for a judgment against Miss Bell for failure to respond. We also negotiated with a property owner to get a sidewalk repaired down on Maple Street. There's going to be a tree removed and then the sidewalk will be replaced. We reached an agreement with that after about 1.5 years. And is there something else, Nicole? We're still waiting to hear from a few other property owners on some blighted properties. We've sent letters out, reaching out. I talked to Brenda, and our next step is going to be to try to approach, possibly to physically go and approach those property owners to see if, just to make sure they got the letters, and if they have any questions that we could possibly answer. We are concerned that a couple of those garages could come down if we don't take them down. So we are working very closely, but those are the big things right now in this portion. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to entertain
I have a question.
Yeah.
If we get a judge,
Yes,
then what?
okay.
What does that mean?
That means that we can then execute the judgment. We would put a lien on those properties. And the amount that we've requested, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's over $100,000. So, then what would happen is the sheriff would go schedule a sheriff's sale of those properties. Now, worst case scenario is we would buy the properties.
Sure.
Then we would own them and we could demolish or do whatever as funds are available to do so. Best case scenario is a third party would buy the properties and then pay off our amounts that are owed to us, the borough that is. And then if they don't bring the property into compliance, then we start over with the new owner. But again, that's, we have to go through the process. Now, she may respond. If she responds, then it could be a much longer and drawn out process. We would have to actually go through the court proceedings. So we'll see what happens. But we're further along today than we were a year ago.
And that's all because the taxes are being paid.
Yeah, the taxes are being
Okay,
paid. She
that's
does
the
pay the
problem.
taxes.
Part if they weren't.
Taxes weren't paid, that'd be really easy.
Fine, we'll bring it into compliance, either or.
That's correct. So, and unfortunately, she doesn't pick up the mail that we send at the PO box. So that's why we have to go through the advertising process. Okay,
Thank you.
any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you. It's my turn. Nicole already mentioned that Southwest Pennsylvania Committee County. I spoke with Robin Marietta today and she said that won't start until sometime in early March. The only other thing is I attended, as did the chief, the meeting of the executive committee of IACT, the Indiana Area Collaborative, and Don was there too. And we are preparing for the March event. Things as usual, the chatter is out there. There are no major on-campus events scheduled for that weekend. So this is the weekend after their spring break, which means it's the weekend after St. Patrick's Day. That we're expecting things to happen. Don't quite know what. That's all I have to report since the last meeting. Questions? Mayor?
Thank you. No report.
No report. Is there any old business? Under new business, we have discussion of 2024 meetings.
In front of you is a document that Nicole and I sat down last week to go over some ideas for how to restructure committees. This is just an entry-level proposal based on our conversations with how she sees staff interacting with council and how it might work better and more streamlined under the new system, which will start next year, of 8 council members rather than 12. So I put a little overview of what we're thinking. And I think the main goal is to reduce the number of meetings. Right now we have technically 6, plus the 2 commissions. So I guess that's 8. And then are there any others? Probably more that you have to attend. Yeah. Just reduce the staff time in those meetings and also allow those of us with really busy schedules to still get all the information from staff when we make our decisions. So the proposal is to first continue with the general session meeting as normally we do it, which is the first Tuesday of the month at 7. And then one of the big changes was instead of having 4 committees, we would have 2 committees of 4 people. And we would stack those committees. So we would have one committee at, we suggested 6 o'clock, allows for an hour with a little wiggle room, and then start the next one at 7:30. You could come to both of the sessions or just yours. And
6, you said?
Can be done in an hour and a half.
Ideally.
Community development
Well,
went a little longer than that last night.
Number 3 here.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but.
Yes.
Stuff is as we go. Want to get through it and then. Okay. Okay.
what we were thinking. So yeah, community development and safety would be together. The idea is that the staff would submit their reports and then highlight a few things to talk about. Not that they would read their entire report and then we would go through one by one to talk about. If there are other bigger projects, that would fall into the third bullet point here. So that's just the general idea. Public Works, there's many areas in that do take a long time. So I don't think that we would really be able to shrink that down beyond an hour. So that would be, that's the general idea for our committee meetings. And then we would have a special committee. So these are committees that would be as needed or seasonal committees. And I put them as such finance and budgeting. So rather than have admin right now, many of the admin meetings are very brief. There may not be a lot of business to be discussed, but when we get to budgeting time, that's where admin comes in or any personnel issues. So it's an as needed, but most likely it'd be what, like September, October, November. So you would have those 3 meetings a year. We would have an ordinance review. So anything that's a larger discussion, something that community development would have done in the past, where you're going over an ordinance and looking through the details, that would be its own committee. That's separate from just normal zoning and code. And then personnel would be some of the administrative committee duties. So any sort of personnel issue that comes up that you would normally discuss in admin would be in the personnel committee. And then we added one communication. So we sometimes give Kyle projects where we have topics that we want to relay or involve engagement with the community. And rather putting that all on staff to have a committee that if there's a topic coming up, like a community engagement event, that we have a committee that just focuses on those sorts of things and building that kind of communication pathway between us and the citizens. And then the last one is our special topics, a lot of our ad hoc stuff. So our big projects. So our reapportionment committee, any sort of large building projects. If there may be a committee that needs to work with Nicole to deal with the project here that we're doing, any kind of new program, so sidewalk program, something that you would need specialized staff time and a bigger discussion. The idea is that would fall in that committee. Those committees would be held on the second Tuesday as needed, and you would stack them if we had more than one. So you're looking at max 3 meetings a month.
You're eliminating the work session.
We're eliminating the work session. The committees are the work session. I don't,
There would only be one all conflict.
Yeah, I would assume that.
most people are gonna go to both committees, but they don't necessarily have to. But the idea is that
But it's the idea that you would at least appoint members.
yes, is that half of you have to be there.
For one of the hours.
But ideally, if you're taking the night off, you would be able to be there for 2 hours since you already are available for 2 hours in your committee meeting.
That was, well, one of the points is because, you all, like, there's one meeting you go to, but Luke said 100 times, oh, if I could have made that public works meeting, the intent was, you wanted to get there and you're hearing stuff for the first time and then you have to vote on it, but it's been discussed for months at that meeting. So, and another point I wanted to make out too, this is putting kind of taking the staff, like we had a staff meeting and we want to be able to present this is what we're doing and this is what we need approval for and move forward. Maybe bring what we're doing and just give you the overview and let you guys say, okay, that's good, go ahead and move forward with it. And us to just tell you, hey, we're getting this done and we need approval for this. Instead of maybe having a couple months worth of discussion over some things, but
The time slots, that's a really tough time. I mean, with kids, before 7. We've been going to our committee meeting a little earlier each day to overlap with the planning commission. And 6:30 is like, it's a stretch getting here. I was like, in the car after taking the girls a guitar, and it was just, so 6:30 is tough. I mean, at 7 o'clock's the day's over, and you know, at least for me anyway. I don't know who else would think that as well, but.
We need longer, but it could start, we could all do it 7 and plan to be out at 9:30, like. yeah. Public Works is used to that.
Just to spitball here. If you swap the special committees and the other ones, if they did run late for legitimate purposes, you could always have an overflow session.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Then you can't overflow back to last week. Just throwing it out as a thought, because his isn't a bad point. If we were to start at say 6:30 and it did run long, that would just be an idea.
Yeah.
Right? Where to like, so you're not necessarily shortchanging something that is important. Right? I mean, we might be throwing a lot of Elmos out in these meetings just to keep from chasing squirrels, but I don't know, just throwing it out because he's not wrong. Say, getting my kid to wrestling practice at 6 o'clock, where I don't know how many times I was on time. So.
Is there a reason why you stacked the 2 committees for the 3rd Tuesday and left the 4th Tuesday open?
Because there's not always 4 Tuesdays. We generally have 3. So, well, sometimes we had to start up the first Tuesday after the first Monday, and sometimes the first day of the month is Tuesday, so it doesn't, yeah. So sometimes we only have 3 available Tuesdays, and the idea was to cut back on meetings, to try to keep it at 3. And yeah, the idea of that, especially that ordinance review and that special committee, that's where, like, if you have a longer discussion and you want specialized time for that, that's where that would go versus having us all discuss it at large.
Am I
Yeah.
wrong to guess that one of your hopeful benefits is that you'll have more people at fewer meetings and therefore things can get rolling more quickly?
Is
Is that the benefit?
The benefit would be that we all get the information from staff and can ask questions right now. There's 3 people on a committee and there's 12 of us. So those 3 people get very much involved in the details, and then they either have to explain it or convince.
Or we have to have a work session where we go into it in detail.
Where we go into detail. So the idea is to allow for people with busier schedules to still consider being on council and be able to get all the information.
So are you blending community development and public safety? And
Yeah, so it's,
those, how do you feel about that, Don? Because I know that we've.
I'm okay with this. I think we're gonna have less people, so we gotta make it work. I like that idea because someone like me that has a little more time, I will probably stay for both sessions, and then I'm up to date on everything. And that's what I like about it, because now, like you said, I have my committee, Josh will have his committee, Gerald has his, Poon has hers, and then we gotta catch everybody else up. Here, I commit 2 Tuesdays minimum, and I get everything.
Tammy, you should, don't think of it like. Development, right? It would be structured differently.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like smash the 2 that exist right now as is together. It would be a blend of them. Different.
Sometimes our meetings are pretty short. And so I think what we'll do is we'll learn how to balance that, because this is all new for everybody. We'll learn how to balance that so that, you know, there might be more need to deal with community development than public safety and vice versa. And we could also do that month to month, maybe focus more on one than the other. We'll have to feel it out, because this is all new.
we can change the committee structure anytime. This is not a
It's not.
ordinance, it's just our decision about how we want to structure this thing.
Staff to pick out what's most important, what's the high priority, what's going on, and that's what's going to be presented. You know, that you guys don't, you know, there's day-to-day activity. We do it at Public Works all the time, but we finally got those directors to stop reading line by line what they were doing. And, everybody knows that everybody's doing their day-to-day activities, but what is the big picture? What's really going on?
The work session is a voting meeting. And we did that in order to be responsive, right? So if something comes in on day 29, that it's not waiting a full 30 days in order to be voted on. Is there any concern of losing that responsiveness by getting rid of that meeting?
We could still call it a work session and still make it a voting meeting. It's just more, it's just like this, a work session that we're presenting information to you, right? Pat, as long as we advertise it as a.
Would be a quorum issue. You would have to have.
Five.
Quorum would be 5, right?
The person. Which I think is,
If we're gonna be voting on something, really ought to be available to everybody, so.
Right.
you're already coming to 3 meetings, so
But we should advertise it 24 hours in advance anyway, right?
My correction, my suggestion might be that then rather than have this whole stacked thing with 4 people, just you run committees as a whole. And you have a second meeting that is basically a work session that is a much more structured work session that works through things. Because my other question, I guess, is if you take the ordinances and make it a special committee, and you sort of have the other sort of the ad hoc committee, that's sort of the special committee. Really, there's not a whole lot of community development that hasn't been pulled into other places. Because honestly, the code and zoning for the duration of my time has been really doing a great job by themselves. And we look at their report and we have a couple questions, but then, I mean, it's never been our practice to read reports or anything along those lines. So, it's that deliberative stuff that can take a while, but I think it's often deliberating about things that are often outside of staff's immediate expertise. Like, it's not simply like, is this thing out of code? It's cats, for example. Yeah, and so, but if you do all, so basically you end up not necessarily needing a whole lot of community development, other than community development is incredibly important to the community in terms of developing it, right? As the name implies. So I don't know if you want to lose that entirely, but if you had this sort of committee of the whole that dealt with these things, that might keep all the pieces together. That'd be my thought.
yeah, I don't know if there's necessarily a need to have separate committees. It was just structured that way just for the sake of maintaining some level of.
With 12 members, it's kind of unworkable with 8.
I don't know if that's unworkable. We haven't tried it yet.
When do all 8 members meet?
First Tuesday and the 3rd, if you're coming to that meeting, which would everybody would have. done. So
Specifically, the first Tuesday would have everyone.
the original thought that Nicole and I were working on was that it would just be kind of a staff driven meeting that we would all be there for. And the thought was like, if we have committees, this is how we would arrange the committees. But if we agree we don't need necessarily committees, then there's no reason to separate that out. But yeah, we're pulling out some community development stuff that we think is broader than just this committee, like ordinance reviews or special topics, and the same with the admin. We pulled those out. Because as far as what we need to hear from staff and making decisions, a lot of that comes from the public works side, zoning, parking, police. So.
I mean, this won't take effect till January.
January of next.
So this is just a opening discussion.
Yeah, we don't know how eight's gonna feel. Could be
After sitting through a 2.5 hour.
It's gonna be different depending on the time of the year also, so.
Planning commission, I blame planning commission.
I know.
It's a lot less time commitment in the evening, because right now she's got at least 6 meetings potentially that you attend in the evenings between her. You know,
About that, it's just, there's a lot of information, and I think a lot of you guys want to hear, like, even though the meeting was really long last night, it was the discussion on the sidewalk stuff was a really good meeting. You know, it just was a long meeting. But, you know, it would have been a great discussion to have, like with the full group. But
Are we bringing food to these meetings now? I'm all about food. I am all about food.
But it's just,
Our meetings now become 3-hour power meeting, basically.
2.5 hours. Or was the original?
Yeah, I mean, I would assume the general session will still stay somewhat shorter because we've all discussed it together as a group. So ideally you have, it gives you like a couple weeks to think and process what you're gonna do when we maybe vote on it.
Or voting.
I would, I mean, if I'm gonna go out, I'd rather, you know, I have the evening off. I have 2-3 hours, doesn't matter, rather than coming multiple.
Attending more than my committee and doing it on separate nights is difficult, so.
So that particular thread, why not have the special committees at 6 o'clock before the regular? Then it's 2 nights. You only gotta go to 2 meetings and you can go to everything.
one, yeah.
Tuesday now, could you put it at 6 o'clock?
I mean, I think that meeting is gonna be probably 3 hours. We're looking at for the for the staff, the third Tuesday. Okay. Oh, we talking about the general session?
Oh,
Do it after.
Well, I mean, I think some of the meetings may be longer, like the ordinance review, or if we're working on like hashing out the details of the sidewalk program, you don't want to be super limited by this next meeting starts at a certain time.
I mean, I think, so if I'm understanding what you're kind of envisioning is Public Works will come and say, okay, we've got, we need to buy a new thing. So do you approve? Here's your 3 choices. What do you think? And actually, but not what do you think? Which of the 3 do you want? Right,
Yeah.
Code has had these number of violations. This is the same as last month. And it's just gonna, is that sort of what you're largely envisioning? And then anything that's complicated really goes into the special meeting. Is that really I mean, that's.
I think how level.
obviously sidewalks would be, the whole rewrite of the ordinance, when we have that meeting with the consultants, would be a meeting by itself, I would think, but the plan is the work session meeting with the staff is to let the staff tell you, hey, this is what's going on, and this is what we need to get this project done. This is the paving we're putting out for bid, and we're gonna put out for bid this street, and this street, and this is when we're putting it out for bid.
Have a big issue with, we can bring it up. Hey, we have a problem with that. We want to talk about it, rather than what colored box of Kleenex we need to buy. Let's get 15 people weigh in on this.
There's gonna be an issue too, when we bring up the paving, like you're gonna still have 8 people saying, well, I still want this road paved, but I think when you have the Public Works Director saying, hey, this is the list that I really want to get paved, and this is what I want to do, then maybe take that.
Chance you could look at it. Here's the list. If you have a specific problem with it, then you can zero in on that right away, rather than having a big conversation. I think it sounds worth trying for sure.
Yeah, that's just a discussion starter. If you guys think of any other ways to structure it, but the idea was to keep it to, for sure, 2 with a third probably is going to happen on most of the time,
Probably harder to vision, because we've all been to the meetings that are all been 2 hours.
Yeah.
So it is very hard for me to kind of vision it too, but I think it could work if we, limit the side talk, limit the getting out of topic sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of it's habit. Like I know Public Works, we've definitely shrunk down those meetings quite a bit just by focusing on the key points, because there's so many elements to the report. They're very technical. That discuss every part of it.
Comment time.
That's it.
Thank you very much for the work. I'm gonna have to digest it, because
And there's other, towns to look at. We had looked a number that do this kind of stacked approach and
Third Tuesday, just be an extra long work session for people who came to both parts of it.
or we all meet together. Yeah.
We could,
We did a lot of work. That'd be great.
it sets up the boroughs. If you have committees, then they get appointed and they have chairs.
Committees, which you would need to appoint it. Yeah.
So would public safety go first that Thursday? Or that Tuesday, so that he is not forced to stay or. fire
Well, I
department
mean,
citizen.
everybody would either, I mean, they figure out what the schedule would be on staff, but they'd all have their time slot.
I mean, if you had one meeting, you could rotate the topics, because that way, if these things don't run smoothly, the thing that's getting kicked to the end is not always getting kicked to the end. So you can sort of, and you wouldn't have to give name, you could give them whatever name you want. It wouldn't have to be public safety, public works, community development. You could just be like, whatever topics and just rotate them or something.
And one thing to remember, this might be one long evening, but it frees up an entire another one. So, okay, if you gotta stay an extra hour, you're still getting a net positive here above an hour, right? So. And honestly, even for staff, same thing.
When we looked into other municipalities and that's what they're doing. They're not having 6, 7 meetings. They have a lot of staff, like staff.
Had 2 meetings a month, the end.
But most were two.
So we did a lot of comparison, like we saw when Casey brought up the spreadsheet of what the other places are doing. Good job, Lisa. So,
By December.
at your next committee meeting, start thinking about, okay, how's this meeting really going?
Any other new business? Then we need to adjourn into an executive session.
These would be.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of things, to contact you. He was listening in. Yeah.
Yeah, we stay here and everything in here is privileged. You can't tell anybody about whatever. It's usually some legal matter.